algebra. Let's see, we're looking at our third day of working with the algebra blocks, and let's see. Yeah, I can pull out my blocks, do a little mini lesson and everything for this as well. What we're looking at is we're looking at how to multiply either a monomial, one part, by a binomial, two parts, or down here, two binomials. That this has two parts and this has two parts. And how to multiply them. Let's look at this one, an x plus 1 and an x plus 5. Well, how would we represent that with blocks? If we had x plus 1 on one side, and we had x plus 5, actually that's kind of nice with the blocks because I got that. What's the result? The result is a little rectangle that's here. And this doesn't quite fit. No, that's close, but it doesn't. Well, here's the thing. What's an x times an x? Well, that's one of these x squared tiles. What's x times 5? Well, that's 5 x's. Let's see, I'm looking for that block. Yep, that's 5 x's. And then what's 1 times an x? Well, that's another x. And that's what's 1 times 5? Well, that's 5 little blocks. Again, looking for my block. There we go. And we go. And so what we have is we have our what we're multiplying together, the question, and our answer, the product, is right here. Now what we can do is we can regroup that and say that it's x squared plus 6x's plus 5 is our answer. So yeah, we rooted our understanding in how to multiply things together by using this diagram. But then we also, in class, we wanted to break away from this. And we also wanted to use another diagram to do the same type of thing. And that's to look at this, this L-shaped thing is right here, where what do we have? Well, again, look at the problem. We had an x plus 1, okay, x and a plus 1, a positive 1. We'll zoom in a bit. And then what was the other one? Well, it was an x plus a 5. So we put each of our parts here and we say, what's x times x? Well, it's an x squared. What's an x times a 5? So we multiply each row and each column together to get all of our answers. So x times 5 is 5x. X times 1, or 1 times x, is just 1x. We can put that there or not. Here's the thing. I already see that we have x's that can combine. So I'm going to put a 1 in front of it. 1 times 5 is just 5. And then we look at this and say, can we combine anything? Yes, right? Here we can combine that to make 6 x's. And that is our answer. And our final answer is x squared plus 6x plus 5. And that's what we saw in the blocks, and that's also what we see with that diagram. So here's the thing, is that when we're multiplying with this, we saw in class that we could use those diagrams, but it's the same as taking this x and distributing it to both parts. And we say, okay, what's x times x? That's an x squared. What's x times 5? That's 5x. What's 1 times an x? So now we're taking this part and distributing it to both parts in the other one. 1 times an x would be 1x, and 1 times 5 would be 5. And again, we see 5x and 1x, we can combine that to make 6 x's, all right? And so our final answer is an x squared, 6x plus 5, same answer that we saw with the blocks, same answer that we saw with this diagram. And this is where we get to multiple representations. Today is a day where you are allowed to choose the representation that helps you the best. So in the packet, I gave you a bunch of these that were blank that you could use. And look, it's got an extra column here that we didn't even use, so we don't even use it because it's just 2 by 2 that we're multiplying. Now, I am hoping that eventually, maybe not today, but eventually you get to this, where you're kind of doing this in your head. So, all right, let's go through. I'm gonna be using my paper to model how I kind of keep track of all of this in my head. And I used my paper to keep track of my answers, and then I look to see, can I combine anything afterwards? Okay, 3x times x. Well, every time we have an x times an x, we get an x squared, and we have 3 times that, so 3x squared. And then 3x times 4. Well, there's no other x to multiply by, so it'll just be an x. And what is 3 times 4? We multiply those numbers, we get 12. We have to put something between them. Since that's a positive 12, it'll be plus 12. That's our answer. A way of double checking this is to ask, what could we pull out of both of these? And we could pull a 3 and an x, a 3 and an x. And if we pulled out that 3x, in the first one, we'd be left with an x. And if we pulled out a 3, divided this by 3 and an x, we'd just be left with 4. That's our way of kind of factoring and working backwards. Okay, so let's get into the heart of this. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 6 is, oh my God, 24. A little mental blank there. All right, negative 2y times a y. Okay, so this is like a 1y, so I'm really just doing negative 2 times 1, which is negative 2. And what is y times y? Well, that's y squared. I distributed that. Now I need to distribute this to the 3. Now the 3 doesn't have a variable, so it's just multiplying the 3 times the negative 2 to get negative 6. And remembering to add that one y in there, one of the y's, not the y squared. Down here, again, we're going to do 5x times 3x. That is 5 times 3 is 15, and x times x is x squared. So we get 15x squared is the first part. Then we multiply the second part. 5x times 2 would be, well, 5 times 2 is 10 with an x added on. 10. All right. And down here, negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and negative 4 times y is negative 4y, and I'm writing that as negative 4x minus 4y. Be a little cleaner on my penmanship there. Okay, now down to these. So the core of the homework is really to do this and this. Going beyond that is going beyond that. But what I really want you to do is the mild and the medium ones. All right, those are the core of what we're doing. There's some easier ones to dive into, and then the core of what the lesson is, the practice. Going beyond that, that's up to you. So I'll put the answers but I'm going to fully explain these. I will do less explaining when we get down to this. But okay, anyway, I'm going to do x. I'm going to distribute the x to both parts. Then I'm going to distribute the 6 to both parts of the second term. So x times x is x squared. X squared. Now, I know I'm also going to do an x times a negative 2, and I'm going to get negative 2x. But then I'm going to do 6 times x, and I'm going to get 6x. What is the combination of these? That would be a 4x, 6 minus 2x. Okay, so that combines those parts. So I did the x times everything, the 6 times this. Now I need to do 6 times negative 2 to get negative 12. That's the answer for the second one. I'm going to switch colors up just so that it also starts to stand out a little bit. Alternating colors. X times x would make an x squared. X times 3 would make 3x. And y, now taking the y times each thing. So we did x times everything. Now doing y times x is xy. So I'm going to put a plus there, and y times 3 is 3y. Or y3, but we tend to put the number in front of the variable. This one, nothing can combine because this is an x squared, which can't combine with an x. This has an x and a y, which can't combine with this or that. We're done. That's simplified. Okay, so x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. Let's see, negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. When I look at this, I can combine 2x minus 4x. When I do that, I would get negative 2x as a result when I combine those. But we also have the x squared part and the minus 8. So our final answer, combining like terms, is that one. All right, and the last one. So let's see, x times x is an x squared. So that takes care of that. X times y, but that's a negative y, is going to be negative xy. And then y times x, I can write it as yx, but it's the same as xy. So I'm going to write it like that so it looks just like the other one. And then y times y, but that's a negative y, so positive times negative, it means the answer is negative. And what is y times y? It's a y squared. All right, when we look at this, we're close to being done, but a negative xy and a positive xy, these cancel each other out. They equal 0. 0xy, which is nothing. So what is our final answer? It's this x squared part and this minus y squared. That's our final answer for that. Okay, and these other ones down here are ones where you kind of have to do the distributive property and then double everything, do this, multiply this out. Multiply this one out, multiply this out, and then subtract the answers of this from this. Yeah. So I'm going to hold off on making the video too long right now, but I will put a still picture of this in the notes. Take care.